All right, so we're diving into all things William Wilberforce, but like not the abolitionist Wilberforce. You know the one? This time it's the 1780s. He's this young MP just starting out. And honestly, I'm dying to know how he goes from basically nobody to representing all of Yorkshire. That's got to be a big deal.
Huge. Imagine going from like playing t-ball straight to the World Series in no time. The thing is, even in his early 20s, Wilberforce just had this like sixth sense for politics, always making these moves you wouldn't expect.
Okay, so set the scene. It's 1781. British politics is a mess, and news about Yorktown hits London. Talk about a party foul.
You can practically hear the gasps. Everyone's scrambling, whispering. It wasn't just the loss. It's like the whole British Empire got punched in the gut. But Wilberforce, he sees which way the wind's blowing. One minute he's kind of sort of with the government. The next he's jumping ship. Like, see y'all, I'm out of here.
Smart cookie got adapt right. And it doesn't stop there. We get the Rockingham government, gone in a flash, then Shelburne's ministry. And get this, rumor was they wanted to make Wilberforce a lord.
And he turns them down at 22. Talk about bold. See, back then, being a lord wasn't just a fancy title. It meant House of Lords, totally different game. But Wilberforce knew the real action, the influence he was after. It was all happening in the House of Commons. He was playing chess, not checkers.
Learning from the best, too, because then you've got William Pitt the Younger, political rock star. Those two were inseparable. Speaking of, can we talk about the Goose Tree Club? Sounds like they took all that political energy and went wild.
Think of it like the ultimate political after-party, but instead of gossip, it's all policy debates over drinks. This is where their bond gets cemented, and it ends up shaping both their careers in ways they couldn't imagine.
Like they say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. But here's a funny thing. Wilberforce, even with all this political stuff, he needed to get away. Reading about him finding peace in nature, like up in the Lake District. Pitt, though, all business all the time.
Yeah, it really shows you how different they were deep down. Wilberforce, sure, he was ambitious, but he needed that balance, that connection to something bigger than politics. Makes you wonder if that's where his passion for social change came from, this need for something more meaningful. But that friendship, it gets put to the test soon enough. Remember the East India Company? We're talking a company so big it practically ran India. They had their own armies even. Made their own laws. Wild times.
So like the Google of their day, but with cannons and stuff.
Exactly. And when the Fox-North coalition tried to take control of it, total power grab. King George III was not having it.
He saw right through them, huh? Talk about a gamble. So what happens?
Fox-North government out. And the king makes this move that nobody sees coming. Appoints Pitt as prime minister at 24.
24. I was still trying to figure out laundry back then.
The newspapers had a field day, called it the mince pie administration, like it was a joke. And to be fair, it kind of was at first. But Wilberforce, he sticks by Pitt's side, offering support even when things in Parliament got rough.
True friend right there. And then 1784 rolls around election time, and this is where it gets juicy. Wilberforce decides to run for Parliament. But not just anywhere. He sets his sights on Yorkshire. Okay, for those of us who weren't alive in the 1700s, why is that a big deal?
Yorkshire wasn't just some county, it was the county. Politically speaking anyway, everyone wanted it. And Wilberforce, this young guy, he's going up against the old guard.
He's up against these Whig families. Like, they'd run Yorkshire forever. It'd be like taking on a political dynasty. What were the Whigs all about anyway?
The Whigs. Think of them like the establishment party. Big on Parliament, less keen on the king having all the power. And they had money, connections, the whole 9 yards. Weren't going to give up Yorkshire easily.
But Wilberforce, he wasn't afraid of a fight. There's this amazing story about this huge gathering, York Castle Yard. Pouring rain, thousands of people. And Wilberforce gets up to speak. And the sources say it's like he transformed.
He was on fire that day. Took the Whig arguments apart piece by piece, had the crowd in the palm of his hand, and just as the energy's peaking, a messenger shows up.
Okay, this is where I need some dramatic music.
This messenger, he's got a letter from Pitt. Parliament's dissolved. General election time. The timing. Couldn't have been better. Wilberforce is suddenly the guy to watch, the face of this new wave. And a group called the Yorkshire Association. They saw their chance.
Hold on. Yorkshire Association? Was that like his fan club?
Not quite. More like a grassroots movement. A bunch of everyday people who were tired of how things worked, wanted things to be fairer, more open. And in Wilberforce, they saw a leader who could actually make it happen.
So they team up. Figured his charisma plus their organization skills. Recipe for a win.
And they were right. They were organized. Rallies, speeches, the whole works. And with Pitt's people backing them, it was a force to be reckoned with.
And Wilberforce. He was unstoppable. Found time to secure his re-election in Hull just in case. That's thinking ahead. But back in Yorkshire, things were getting tense. The Whigs knew they were losing their grip. And then, right before the election,
they caved. Didn't even go to a vote. Wilberforce and his running mate, Duncan, declared the winners. No contest. It was huge. This nobody alliance sweeping in, wiping the floor with the old establishment.
You'd think, after all, that Wilberforce would be like, all right, time for a fancy government job. Maybe even a knighthood or something. But that's not how it goes down, is it?
Nope. And this is where things get really interesting with Wilberforce. See, he wasn't in it for the power. What he wanted was freedom. Freedom to do what he thought was right. And being a minister, that usually meant following the party line, even if you disagreed.
And let's face it, those government jobs probably came with tons of paperwork. And Wilberforce, not exactly known for being organized.
That's putting it lightly. Remember, he's all about connecting with people, understanding what they need, leading Yorkshire. It wasn't just a title to him. He spent his summers traveling all over, meeting the people he represented, building a totally different kind of power, one based on trust and actually caring about what people needed.
So what's the lesson here? I mean, we're talking about stuff that happened ages ago. What can we learn from this younger Wilberforce before he was the famous one?
Wilberforce's story shows us that ambition can be a lot of things. It's not always about climbing to the top. Sometimes it's about knowing what you're good at and choosing a path that lets you live by your own rules. He could have easily been just another MP, but he took chances, trusted his gut, and he ended up changing the game.
It does make you wonder, though. What if he had gone for that government job? Would he have been able to do as much about slavery later on? It's like one of those big what-ifs in history.
That's what makes history so fascinating, right? All those what-ifs. And honestly, I think the choices Wilberforce made, even back then, they still make people think, make us question things.
He definitely gives us a lot to think about. Well, that's it for this deep dive into the early days of William Wilberforce. Remember, just because your path looks different doesn't mean it can't be amazing. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.